Timeless Toni Storm will defend the AEW Women's Championship against Mercedes Mone. This is, without question, the biggest women's match that the company has ever put on a pay-per-view in 5.5 years. I know this is dividing the fan base on what they think will happen here. Will Toni win? Will Mercedes win? I mean, you can make arguments for both, and both are very fair arguments. Before we get into the predictions here, I will say Mercedes' body of work, no matter what you think of the woman and the fact that she's holding more championships than you can fucking count, I think Mercedes' body of work has really spoken for itself, speaks for itself here. She is a tremendous pro wrestler. She always has been. I've been on that train since the early days of NXT. And if there's one thing that I've preached to the choir here in regards to Mercedes is that the woman loves what she does and she loves professional wrestling, and she's always wanted to make an impact. That Bayley match in Brooklyn still stands as the greatest women's match of all time. And what it means not only for Sasha and Bayley, but what it meant for WWE, because without that match, I don't think WWE is looking at women's wrestling the way that they are today. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Mercedes wants to beat that, and she wants to create that moment in 2025. Will Saturday afternoon be that moment? She's going to fucking die trying. I know she is. I think they come close, and I do think that this is going to be their Sasha Bayley moment, Jason, on Saturday. But in the end, we've talked about it extensively. Until I physically see it with my own eyes and that woman is laying on her back looking at the lights, I cannot predict anything else but a Mercedes win. Now, we can sit here and talk about the Women's Championship and the TBS title. What happens if she holds both of the Women's Championships? That's another discussion that could be a whole podcast topic. But if you look at the other side and you give it to Toni beating Mercedes, what does that do? Is that the right move? Because you would think, realistically, that if Mercedes has accumulated all these championships and this undefeated streak, that you want to put someone younger over and create the biggest star possible. Why would you do that with Toni when she's already probably one of the biggest stars in all of women's wrestling? I mean, none of it really makes sense, and I genuinely feel that they've sacrificed so many women to get to this point, and I think either decision here is going to be a detriment to the division. Now, that's just my take. I'm going Mercedes until I see the woman physically lose. I can't bet against her. I'm going Mercedes to win the Women's Championship.
I think that you mentioned the Brooklyn Takeover match with Sasha and Bayley. It kind of reminds me of, I think it was Lanny Poffo who mentioned that his brother was always chasing after that next big match that could top the match that Savage had with Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. So I don't know what Mercedes in her mind considers to be her very best match. It might be that Brooklyn match. Maybe there's been another one that's topped it. So I'm sure she's going in there with the attitude of, I want this to be the best and biggest match that I've ever had. I'm sure they both are. So I expect that this match is going to be excellent. You've got two excellent performers. I'm looking forward to the match itself. I thought that she would have dropped the TBS championship by now. I even floated the possibility, hey, maybe they'll have Mina beat her last week on Dynamite 300, and Toni can cost her the TBS title. That takes care of that problem, right? She doesn't have that title anymore. And she won again. So she's coming into this match as the TBS champion, right? It would be the equivalent of somebody like Hogan Warrior, where Warrior came in as the Intercontinental champion, right? And Hogan came in as the world champion. Would it have really made sense for Hogan to win the Intercontinental title in that match, right? Probably not. In this case, the TBS title is not on the line, though. This is only for the world championship. I'm probably betting against everybody else in this case, but I feel like this is a timeless Toni Storm win in this match. I feel like at some point, Mercedes has to lose. If she wins this match, she has both titles. Do you then have her just simply give up or have the TBS title stripped away from her? And that's how her TBS title run comes to an end, and they just have a tournament and they crown a new champ. Is that really the end game here? Or is it a case where she beats Toni Storm and then she's going to defend both belts And so when she finally loses, she loses only the TBS title. Well, that would be pretty stupid, wouldn't it? If she finally gets beat, but it's for the lesser of the two titles. This is the conundrum now that we kind of find ourselves in. And I'm sure Tony Khan in his head has, I would hope, has an idea for what he plans to do coming out of the show if he finds himself in this situation. I don't see the vision here. If you just have her go in there and win the world title, and now she has both. I don't see how it benefits the women's division. I don't see what that next logical step is unless you strip her of the TBS title, and what a waste that would be. She has to lose at some point. That begins something of either a downward spiral, or it just shows that, you know what, she's mortal. She's not unbeatable. She can be defeated. And I think that's what we're going to see here. I think she's going to lose to Toni Storm, and her world title win will come, but it's going to have to wait for another day. And maybe I'm in the minority on this, but that's what I believe.
You make sense. I don't want to sit here and say, you know,
I always make sense.
You always do. I agree. I have floated the idea out there, and I mean, I might have been on an island all to myself here. I know I've mentioned it here, and you didn't really kind of buy into it. But do you see now that we're in July and before October rolls around? I mean, it'll be here before you know it. Do you see them putting both belts on Mercedes and doing exactly what you said? And we've come so close. Why would they take the belt off her now and have her beat Jade Cargill's TBS title record so that Mercedes is number one and it's not held by a now WWE star as the longest reigning TBS champion? Is that a possibility for them? Is that something in their head that they're thinking about?
Well, I mean, now that we've gotten so much closer, yeah, sure. Because that would be what, October? I think that she would. Okay, so we're close enough now that if you factor that into this and you believe that, okay, they want her to set the all-time record as the longest reigning TBS champion of all time, to me, that's even worse if she wins here. Because if she wins the title here, they're not going to want to beat her, at least until she drops that TBS title. If they want her to break that record, then she just wins the world title on Saturday and continues beating everybody and staying undefeated for at least 3 more months. What does that accomplish?
Now, the division's going to be fucking long gone after that point.
I just can't see it. I don't, like, there's no way. There's no way.
AEW was, to me, AEW was squandered making a new star here. That's the biggest takeaway for me. If Mercedes wins, it kills the division even further. If Toni wins, who's actually getting over here? What are you doing?
Well, I mean, if Toni wins and I'm right, and Megan Bayne wins the gauntlet,
sure,
then you could always. Now we've seen it already because they gave the shot to Megan Bayne so early in her run, but you know she doesn't have to, you know, quote unquote, cash in her opportunity right away. They could circle back around to it. They can get that title on Megan Bayne and really, you know, go all the way with her. So, and maybe it's not Bayne, maybe somebody else. Because remember, we have those gauntlet matches, and the winners will be able to get a future championship match. So. There's somebody out there, whether it's Megan Bayne or somebody else, who can beat Toni Storm at some point, as Mariah May did, and they can try to make a new star and get the title on somebody else. It doesn't have to be Mercedes. That's what I'm counting on here, that Toni will retain and that it will be somebody else who ends up in that spot, and Mercedes can go on to, again, if they want her to break the record, she'll be TBS champion into the fall. If they don't give a shit about that, this could be the beginning of her downfall, where she comes back down to earth and she loses this title and she drops that title and she goes back to Sweden or Austria, wherever the fuck it was that she won that EWA title, and she dropped. Like, it could be the start of a whole new story with her. But I just feel like they've sort of boxed themselves in by not taking this title off of her beforehand. And I think the right move to make here is for Toni Storm to win this match.